Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics. Hi guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Basically, guys, today we're being free thinking, innovative, open minded, and discussing Congress. Congress, one of the houses of the legislative branch in our government. United States Congress is the legislature of the federal government of the United States. It's a bicameral being composed of a lower body, the House of Representatives, and an upper body, the Senate. The Congress meets in the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., and both houses, senators and representatives, are chosen through direct elections, through vacancies. The Senate may be filled by a governor's appointment, however. The Congress has 535 voting members, 100 senators, and 435 representatives. The Vice President of the United States has a vote in the Senate only when senators are evenly divided. The House of Representatives has 6 non-voting members. So, guys, while we're talking about Congress and while we're talking about the midterms, in assisting me with the answers to my questions, because I'm always asking why, today I have a special interview guest with me, Bert Olson. He's running for Congress in the South Dakota district. And I have a lot of questions, of course. But first, my first question would be, how's it going, Bert?
Yeah, it's going well. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad you're with me today. Basically, you probably know that I'm a progressive. So I have a few questions about. Well, first, my first I have a question, like a two-part question, which is basically, who is Bert Olson and how is he going to change our government to work for a government that works for all of us and not the few?
Well, I am a over the road trucker that has become really concerned the last couple of years how the country has been influenced by the Trump phenomena. And I am deathly afraid that Trump could be reelected in 2024. So I determined last summer that I was going to work for whoever ran against our Republican senator and representative in South Dakota. And it turns out there was no Democrat running against the Republicans. So since no one did, I decided to run as an independent against our representative, Dusty Johnson. It's kind of a last minute decision, but I hope to keep Congress out of the hands of the Republicans. I am afraid that Congress would turn into a circus. We'd have hearings on Black Lives Matter and Antifa and Hunter Biden's laptop, and it would just completely sweep under the rug the January 6th insurrection, which I think was one of the most terrible things that's happened in our country. I was aghast as I watched it on TV. That's one of the reasons I want to run against Dusty Johnson, because there was 10 representatives that voted to impeach Donald Trump, and Dusty Johnson did not have the courage nor the moral clarity to vote to impeach Donald Trump.
So you would have impeached Donald Trump then, if had you been in the Congress?
Oh, definitely. The whole world saw him incite the insurrection. People say that he didn't actually incite the insurrection. The examples I like to use is Charles Manson didn't knife anybody. Osama bin Laden didn't fly the planes into the Twin Towers, but we all know that they were behind those terrible crimes. And anybody that has a brain, keeps their eyes open, knows that Trump was behind that insurrection. And he's trying to overthrow our election. That offends me. My mother's been an election worker all her life. It's the American election has been one of the shining lights of the world. And we got the Democrats and Republicans on the election boards, and they watch each other and they keep it honest. And until Trump whoever won or lost the election, after the election, they concede and say the people have spoken and they bow to the will of the people. And it's terribly dangerous for Donald Trump to try and mess with that tradition, that American tradition.
Besides Donald Trump, what do you plan to do differently than your opponent, the Republican?
Dusty Johnson is pretty much a yes man Republican. I would back Joe Biden. I think he's a pretty good old politician. He's been in Congress since back in the good old days when people had respect for each other and worked across the aisle. That's the way Congress is supposed to work. The, you got the two parties work together and they come out with a compromise, and that's about as well as we're going to come. You know, there's the old saying that making law is like making sausage. You don't want to see the actual process going, but the way things have gone the last few years, and I think a lot of that's influenced by dishonest right wing media propaganda, that the right wing of our politics has gotten to the point where all they want to do is block anything that the Democrats want to do. And I would try and bring a little more balance back to government. And I do like the progressive policies that Joe Biden has put forward, things like universal health care, affordable college, basically all the things that Bernie Sanders was going for, I agree with. And I think a few more Democrats or progressives in Congress in 2022 is we could have a transformational government. When you look at some of the giants of the past, like Franklin Roosevelt gave us Social Security, minimum wage, a 40-hour work week. And that's things that everybody agrees with. They wouldn't want to get rid of it. Lyndon Johnson gave us Medicare, and I'm old enough to enjoy Medicare. And people shouldn't have to go broke because they get sick in this country. The rest of the modern world has got universal health care.
So, Bert, just to push back on that, because I am a progressive, and I'm glad that you said that you appreciate some of the things that Bernie Sanders put forward. Joe Biden did famously say that he was going to veto Medicare for all if it ever got to his desk. So his version of universal health care, I come to believe, is this some kind of, I guess, expansion of Obamacare, which I don't see happening at all. What would you do in that case to make a positive and lasting, meaningful change nationally to make maybe the expansion or whatever you think Joe Biden means by universal health care to happen?
I don't recall that he said he would veto universal health care if it came to his desk.
He said it in the MSNBC debate against Bernie Sanders and Bloomberg. That was the debate that Kamala Harris did the busing thing. That little girl was me.
Okay. Well, I think Joe has got the good sense to change his mind and to move ahead. So I'm convinced if we had a Congress that actually put universal health care on Joe Biden's desk, I can't imagine he would veto something like that.
Interesting.
He might have said it during a debate, and that's one of the things about politics is in a primary election, you have to somewhat pander to your voters. That's kind of a crude way of putting it, but if you're completely honest and uncompromising, you're going to be honest and uncompromising from the sidelines. In politics, you've got to work with what's the world we live in.
Now, that's an interesting statement because FDR famously primaried out every Democrat that did not fall in line with him. And he got a 4-year consecutive, or 4 consecutive terms. He famously did that. Do you agree with the FDR roll up your sleeves and go to work on your own party kind of thing? I guess not, right? you want to comment on
Well,
this?
I would. I've been a Democrat all my life. But I think in South Dakota, in particular, Democrats. The last Democrat we won a statewide election was Stephanie Herseth Sandlin. She was a daughter of a senator or daughter of a governor, and she famously voted against Obamacare. And she irritated a lot of the progressives in South Dakota, and she lost the 2010 election. And I think if she'd have stayed true to Democratic progressive principles and voted for Obamacare, maybe she would have won the election. But I think that a bold progressive platform in South Dakota will energize a lot of young people that are basically turned off by conventional party politics and trying to be a blue dog Democrat and pandering to what we think the voters are in South Dakota. I think that's a losing strategy.
So, how would you circumvent the present national stage political circus? In the absence of Donald Trump, we have a whole other political circus. Like you mentioned, the Build Back Better agenda is held up in purgatory by the two senators with ties to extensive lobbyist interests, Kristen Sinema and Joan Manchin. Is there any argument you could give to make Senator Manchin or Senator Sinema persuade them differently?
I think they're kind of a blessing in disguise. So let's look at 2009 when Obama pushed through the Affordable Care Act with absolutely no Republican support. And that enabled the Republicans to campaign against the Affordable Care Act, and they took over Congress in 2010. What Manchin and Sinema have done is blocked the very programs that a lot of Americans want. So now Democrats can run in favor of Biden's Build Back Better policy instead of the Republicans campaigning against this terrible socialism that the Democrats have passed. Now the Democrats can, and the progressives can campaign in favor of Joe Biden's unfulfilled promises.
And do you see that to be a winning strategy for the midterms election coming up?
I think it's the only strategy, basically. In football, you got the prevent defense when you're ahead right at the end of the game, and you try and prevent a loss. And more times than not, that ends up being bad strategy. So I think this year we should boldly campaign on a progressive agenda and have faith that the American people are going to see what is best for the American people. Something that's unique this year after the January 6th insurrection, only Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger had the courage to buck their party. But and they're probably going to lose their seats in Congress. They're going to lose their jobs because of that courage. But I think there are a lot of honest Republicans that watch the actual news instead of the Fox entertainment, and people that don't listen to whatever Donald Trump says is gospel truth. I think a lot of them, in the privacy of the voting booth this fall, are going to abandon the Republican Party because it's just gotten to be such a circus.
So, if Joe Biden is reelected and he has the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency again, another supermajority, do you think that these things will get done in the future?
If he gets a little bit stronger Congress, we've got we don't need a supermajority. They have the word escapes me, but it's a budget reconciliation when they
Right.
can pass laws with just a majority in the Senate.
Right.
You don't need the supermajority.
Filibuster proof.
I think if we get 2 or 3 more senators in Congress, so we got 52 or maybe 53 or 4 senators, so that we've got enough senators to block out Manchin and Sinema. And if we have a majority in the House of Representatives, we don't need a supermajority to be truly transformative.
So I'm just curious as well. There was a bill, a huge bill that passed, the $2 trillion HR 3684 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that passed the Congress. Now that kind of divided the Progressive Caucus, and it divided the Democratic Party. The Nancy Pelosi, the leadership, on voting for it. The squad ended up voting against the Infrastructure and Jobs Act in the Congress, but it ultimately passed. What would your vote have been?
Philosophically, I agree with the squad, but you got the reality of the way Congress is. There's a lot of Democrats that have been in Congress for a long time don't have the courage to take a really progressive stand. So I guess I would take leadership from Joe Biden in deciding what I'm going to do. He knows what he's doing. He's been there for so long, and he's just got incredible political instincts, I think.
So
Then,
set the
can I jump into different?
Yeah, if you like,
I
go
just
ahead.
thought of something that I watched. The Chinese General Sun Tzu said, "Know your enemy," and so when I was a trucker, when I was a farmer, when I was a roofer, I always used to listen to Rush Limbaugh. I listened to Donald Trump's rallies every month. I live stream him in the truck. And something he says over and over is how much of an embarrassment the Afghanistan withdrawal was and how he would have done it differently. But the fact was, in 2018, he released about 5,000 Taliban leaders that are forces that spent 20 years rounding up. And after he lost the election, he wouldn't let Biden in on any transition activities. And instead, he sent Pompeo over to negotiate with the Taliban and basically agreed to give up Afghanistan, to withdraw from the country. Trump promised to withdraw in May. So that's the hand Biden was dealt with.
And do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree with what Biden did. I would have rather seen us stay. We stayed in Korea for 70 years. And I think if we'd have stayed in Afghanistan for another 40 or 50 years, the country might have gotten to the point where it could have supported itself. But Biden was crafty enough to know that when we withdrew, and he campaigned on withdrawing, and he recognized that staying in Afghanistan is not a vital interest of the United States. So he moved the withdrawal date to the end of the summer rather than Trump's May, to give us time and to give a little more time to set up the Afghanistan government. And he gave them all the support he could, but I think he knew that as soon as we withdrew our troops and our money, the government would collapse. There's this old saying, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And there's really no correct answer. What was happening, as long as our troops stayed in Afghanistan, the government was going to stay standing, and the people were going to stay in Afghanistan. They didn't want to leave. If they were in Afghanistan, it's because they had a reason to be in Afghanistan. And Biden knew that the only way to break that impasse was to bring our troops out. And to the day, he brought all our troops out. And I think, like he knew was going to happen, when we weren't there anymore, the government collapsed almost instantly. Biden had 5,000 troops ready to rush back in and take over the civilian airport where the civilians were. And he pulled off a magnificent evacuation. There was the first flight, the panicky civilians overran that. And you saw on TV people falling off the airplane. We saw that over and
Right.
over and over. But it was only that one flight. Dozens and dozens, or maybe it was hundreds of flights, were successful. It was Biden did a masterful job.
Okay. Um. Well, agree to disagree on that, Bert. But I
Okay.
see your point. So set the tone for your constituents. What is the main message you'd like to convey to your constituents? What are you running on?
I am running on courage and honesty in Washington. Right now, Dusty Johnson is he's a Republican yes man. He's afraid to stand up to Donald Trump, and I think he thinks that that's what the South Dakota voters want because there's a perception now that South Dakota is a red state at this time. But it wasn't that long ago we had Tim Johnson, Daschle, and Stephanie Herseth were our congressional delegation. We've had Democratic governors before, and there's a political pendulum that swings. And I think with Donald Trump, the pendulum has swung as far towards fascism as it's going to. I basically want to give the voters a chance to vote for somebody else. I want to give them a choice. Because before I entered the race, Dusty Johnson was the only choice South Dakota voters had. I want to
All right.
give young people, progressive people, intelligent people the chance to vote for a progressive candidate because it makes sense to have universal health care and a lot of the progressive agenda. It's right now we've got the only thing we lead the world in is our military is bigger than the next five countries put together. I'm probably not going to win the vote in Box Elder. I don't think we really need a bunch of nuclear bombers ready to take off at a moment's notice. We've had them there for pretty much all
Wow.
my
You're
lifetime.
gonna Wow, Bert, you're gonna make Lindsey Graham cry if you say that one more time. So I think what a lot of us need here, especially the young people, is definitely Medicare for all. It's definitely the legalization of marijuana, which is in the House. There's a decriminalization bill. Would you support that if it went back to the House for finalizations? In
Oh,
your
definitely. I was state's attorney back in the mid 90s, and my roommate wanted to grow some marijuana, so I granted him immunity. I wrote immunity granted and I signed an empty box. And somehow that box got found in somebody else's house. And I was also a farmer. I was in law enough to realize I'd rather be a farmer. So I made the decision to sacrifice my law license. So when I was in front of the South Dakota Supreme Court, when they were trying to decide if they should suspend my license for 2 years or 3 years, and I was supposed to be contrite. But I told them that I still smoke marijuana. I have the constitutional right to smoke marijuana. And someday you, the South Dakota Supreme Court, will agree with me. And they decided that I should be suspended for 3 years. They said I can be a lawyer in South Dakota or I can smoke pot, but I can't do both. And looking back, I guess at the time I probably was a pot addict. I made some foolish decisions at the time and I don't smoke it anymore. But when I took that stand, I was standing up for all the people that were in jail for marijuana. And that's ridiculous. People should have
that
the choice to do that.
that is one of the issues I think you should run on right there. That because you just touched my heart right there with that. Just let you know. But that's all the questions that I have, Bert. So I really appreciate you being on the show. Yeah, and I hope you come back. I hope you come back as the incumbent.
Thank you. I do too.
All right. Well, take care of yourself, and remember, guys, be free thinking, innovative, and totally open minded. This is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. Y'all have a great day.